The laughter didn't sound like joy. It sounded like knives. On live television, with cameras zooming in and the audience roaring, a young black woman froze at center stage. The host, grinning too wide, reached down and tugged at the hem of her blue dress. The fabric jerked upward, exposing the bare skin of her thigh. Gasps cut through the room, followed quickly by cruel chuckles that felt heavier than spotlights. "Is this your big moment?" the host jeered, his words sharp, rhythmic, meant to slice. A man in the front row leaned toward his neighbor and muttered, "She doesn't belong here." Others laughed, their voices layering into a chorus that drowned her dignity. She tugged her dress back down, her eyes low, her fingers trembling against the fabric. But she didn't run. She didn't beg. She clenched her fists at her sides, her breath thin, her silence screaming louder than any protest. In that moment, on national TV, she stood alone, trapped under the weight of mockery, yet refusing to break. The stage lights burned hotter than fire, but what scorched her most were the words. A panelist leaned into the microphone, his voice carrying across millions of living rooms, "She looks like she borrowed that dress from a thrift store." Laughter exploded, rehearsed and cruel. She swallowed hard, her throat tightening, yet she stepped toward the microphone to introduce herself. "My name is," but the host cut her off, his smile venomous. "Speak up, sweetheart. Or are you just here to look pretty?" The crowd laughed again, louder this time, as if cruelty had become their entertainment. Her stomach clenched. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the floorboards. But then, in the midst of ridicule, a memory surfaced, her grandmother's voice, steady and unyielding, "Dignity isn't what they give you, it's what you refuse to surrender." She steadied her breathing, though her hands betrayed her, shaking against the cold metal of the microphone. The humiliation felt endless. Every laugh was a whip. Every camera angle, a spotlight on her pain. But humiliation has a breaking point, and it came with a sudden, shocking act. The host's hand reached again, tugging at her dress. This time the fabric slipped higher. And in that reckless moment of mockery, something hidden was forced into the open, something that would silence the entire room. The room froze. Under the blazing stage lights, the hem of her dress rose just high enough to reveal ink etched into her skin. It wasn't a flower, nor a phrase of rebellion. It was a crest, bold, sharp, undeniable, the insignia of the 82nd Airborne Division. A banner wrapped beneath it read, "All gave some gave all." The laughter died so suddenly it felt like the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. The host's grin collapsed, his hand still suspended awkwardly in the air. A panelist shifted in his seat, his voice faltering, "That's a soldier's mark." From the audience, a man in a veteran's cap stood slowly, eyes fixed on her leg. His voice cracked as it broke the silence, "You don't wear that unless you earned it, or unless it was passed to you by blood." Every camera zoomed in, the image now streaming live across the nation. She lifted her chin, her voice steady, stripped of fear. "It belonged to my father. He served. He died in uniform. I carry his memory so no one forgets his sacrifice." The studio erupted in whispers. The very same crowd that mocked her seconds ago sat stiff, their shame heavy, their laughter curdled into silence. The host, who moments earlier had wielded cruelty like a weapon, now looked like a man who had picked a fight with history, and lost. The silence pressed heavier than the spotlights. The host fumbled with his cue cards, his lips parting but no words escaping. The crowd that had cheered his cruelty shifted uneasily, some lowering their heads, others whispering apologies no one could hear. A woman in the second row buried her face in her hands, as if ashamed to have laughed. Then the veteran in the audience rose fully to his feet. He straightened his back, raised a trembling hand, and delivered a salute. The cameras caught it, the nation saw it, and the studio transformed. Applause cracked through the air, not polite, not staged, but raw, rising, undeniable. The sound swelled until it drowned the shame. She stood still, her face calm, her eyes locked on the host who now looked small behind his microphone. The tattoo on her thigh was no longer a mark hidden by fabric, it had become a banner. She didn't flinch. She didn't hide. She let the silence of her defiance hang in the air until it crushed every trace of mockery. The host, pale and shaken, finally dropped his gaze. The power he once commanded with jokes and sneers had been stripped away, not by shouting,